Good afternoon, everybody. This is Steve with another edition of Let's Play the first 3 turns of your Emperor career. What we're going to look to do in this video is show you what the first 3 turns might look like and some of the decisions that you might make. This is going to be a tutorial Let's Play, so each turn may take a significant amount of time while I explain what I'm doing. We'll go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to actually create a small quadrant. I'm going to pick Neo-American, which is a fairly basic culture, fairly easy to play because these are 2 strong houses. I'm going to go ahead and call myself Hawkstorm because I like it, and I will give myself this bad boy in this color just because I like blue. I will call myself Stevonius, and I'll give myself this guy. Alright, so while everything is loading, the goal of this video is for you to understand not only what you should be doing, but why. So especially the first turn, I'm going to spend some time going through the various screens that are present in the game, talk a little bit about strategy, about what I'm doing and why, and talk a little bit about how to do some of the various things in the game. So as you can see, there is only one province. Again, this is a small empire. So as we zoom out, this is a small quadrant. The first thing that I like to do is look at the Grand Vizier screen. This is a fairly new screen. It's in 703. It tells you some potential goals based on where I am in the game and also some potential issues. So I have 2 potential issues right now. My gross empire product, which is up here, is dangerously close to being in the negative. Anytime that goes in the negative, I have a larger chance of economic collapse because then I have to make up the shortfall with my empire treasury. Also, I have 1 or more planets that have some unrest. We don't want it to get much over 30% because then you start having issues with riots or potential issues. So here's some goals that I could start looking at. I can increase my popular support, particularly love, to at least 65%. This is up here. I'm relatively short on holdings. Holdings are essentially planets, systems, or provinces that you control. I should have at least 5 holdings to have a steady foundation because holdings are what generate tax income and also a big part of what generate materials for the empire if you don't have trade. We've already talked about the gross empire product, and I don't have any projects started, which is not surprising because the game just started. This shows the winning conditions and losing conditions. So this is a good screen to touch pretty much every turn. My popular support is at 50%. The Zil Final War Victory is a late game. Essentially, my overall power of my house needs to be at least this amount here. At that point, I have a 50-50 chance of winning. This is obviously a game mechanic that will be heavily fleshed out. My assassination chance is extremely low because I'm relatively popular and I don't have any fear, but that increases sharply as I lose popularity. Economic collapse is 20%. That's because I'm close to being at 0, even though I do have a positive treasury. So let's go ahead and look at our treasury. Now, one thing I'm also working on is tooltipping. As you can see, this is going to be part of the new help screen. Every major screen will have this eye, and it will have a larger screen kind of showing you what you need to do. And then I'm trying to tooltip basically every major thing that you can have on a screen so you have an idea of what to do. So the first thing I look at is I only have 2 holdings, New Terra and New Series. They're not making a whole lot of money. I don't have very much going on, 98 billion credits. Really not making much at all. My financial prime is right here. Now, they have a tax efficiency rating, and right now this is at 25%, which is pretty much as low as you can go. That means that, let's say, my planets would generate 1,000 BC for taxes. I would only actually be able to collect 250 of them. So replacing him may be important. So that's something we can kind of look at. So I'm going to look at that. I'm going to look at my treasury, which I have a fair amount in there. So even if I go the whole year and I go into the negatives, I should still be able to make it up. I'm looking at my planets here. I don't have any planets that are in the negative that are mine. If planets are owned by another house, I don't particularly care because they're the ones that have to share the support of a negative empire product or a planetary product. That just means that I don't have to pay for it. So now here are the budget allocations. As you can see, I can do this at the first of every year. I have 4 that right now matter: military, domestic, intel, and savings. Reforms are not in yet. That will be in the next 0.8 version. That's with kind of the science process. So military, what that lets you do is that lets you decrease unrest at the cost of fear and also planet happiness. Essentially, you're putting people under your thumb. You do want some military presence, or else you will start to have unrest the other way because you don't have anybody guarding your planets. About 20 to 30% is good if you just kind of want to keep it there and you don't want to be a jackbooted thug. Domestic kind of goes the other way. It's a lot less efficient. It takes about 4 times as much domestic budget to accomplish the same thing as it does with military. But the nice thing about domestic is you build love instead of fear, and you also increase population's planet happiness and lower their unrest. So you get quite a bit of bang for the buck. So I'm going to go ahead and lower military. I right click to lock it in. I'm going to increase domestic because I'm a nice guy. I'm going to increase it to about 50%. Go ahead and lock it in. Now intel, what that does is that's a passive, basically it's your spy network. And the more you put into intel, the greater chance you have of actually gaining a character information. In other words, you'll go up 1 level in their intel level. So I'm going to go ahead and put the majority of that into intel. So right now, I'm not going to put anything in savings, and then reforms are not in yet. So I'm going to go ahead and lock in the budget. As you can see, it's locked in now. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get out of that screen. The next thing I'm going to look at is the houses, kind of see where everybody is. So right now I have 3 houses that have at least 1 holding. I have 2 that are dispossessed. In other words, they don't have any holdings. So the first thing they're going to do is try to claim holdings. Now I will say that this is a very small generation. Generally you should have all the houses have at least 1 holding. That's something I will probably update in a future update. Milok, right now they're indifferent towards me. Kirli Finn is in a Cold War. Horlock and Hawken are allies. Unfortunately, they're very weak. And then Waldegrave is cooperating with me, but again, they're very weak. So really, Milok is the one that I kind of need to look at. Now, Milok is typically important when I get them in a game because they have a high mining level. This is the tradition level. Basically, this is what houses are good at over the centuries. Houses specialize in 1 or more things. Milok's specialization is in mining. So if I want planets with good miners and good viceroys that mine, I probably need to use a Milok character. And right now, since they are indifferent, there is a good chance that their characters will cooperate. So we're looking at that. Over here is the Emperor reputation. Of course, it starts at 0. We have negative reputation, we have positive reputation, and then overall reputation. Now, if the overall reputation drops below what's called negative 500, there is a chance that the house will lower their relations with me. This happens in several ways. I do things to piss off their characters. I do things to piss off their house leader. I do things just to piss off their house in general. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Here are their resources. This shows you what they have. Now, they have projects just like you do. They have actions just like you do. And they pay for those projects just like you do. They use money, they use admin, they use basic, heavy, rare, and energy, just like you do. So if they don't have the resources, they cannot enact projects. Over here is sort of their ultimate goal and secondary goal. This will always be active for the time being for testing. However, as the intel system gets added, you will not see this. You will have to conduct intel on the house in order to see what they're doing. This is their their culture, primary culture, and this is their specialty. We already talked about mining. They also have a mercantile culture, so they are reasonably good at their pops are good at finance. So we'll go ahead and get out of that. Now the next thing I like to look at is just the main overview. Again, this is a better view of the 5 planets. Now some people have talked about, hey Steve, are you going to put sorters in here? Absolutely I am. This screen will have a lot more effectiveness. One big thing that's missing is unrest. It will have several other, I guess, sub-pages soon, probably before 8. But for now, it's kind of pretty basic, but it's on my list of things to update. So, I'm looking here. I don't see any planets. Like my planet, New Terra, is actually not making a lot of money, even though they have plenty of resources here. Population is reasonable. So I'm going to take a closer look at New Terra. So of course I can click straight on it and I can go to the system that New Terra is in. And we're going to go ahead and look at New Terra first. Public order is 88%. Here's the Viceroy. He's pretty well loved. He has a very low fear, very high love. We'll go ahead and click into the planet and give a little more about what's going on. So right now there's no riot chance on the planet, which is good. Generally early in the game you won't have a riot chance. Here, this tells you the unrest factors. The more pluses, the higher of a chance that particular factor has of making a change here. And of course, with negatives, the same thing. So right now, people are very happy. They've got jobs generally. The culture is pretty homogenous. I don't like the other cultures here. There are some cultures that are not very tolerable. The planet's nice, so quite a few people like the planet. Now, the planet's economy is poor, and there aren't goods to buy. So when you see this, that means there's probably a lot of people that are really missing retail. So let's take a look at the economic command mode. So as you can see, the revenue for my capital is pretty small, 131 billion credits. That's not much at all. They're not cranking out a lot of build points, so they can't really build things. We'll take a closer look at this. This is the build plan, and this is basically a window that shows how many build points are being generated and what is being built and in what percentages, and you can see the percentages here. So this Viceroy, Rotundus Dalton, has chosen admin as the build focus. However, so you would say, oh, well, why isn't that the highest percentage? So in a perfect world, admin would be the primary focus. However, let's look a little bit into his traits. So as you can see, he has high average honor and average humanity and high charm. That means that he generally cares about his people, as you can see by the high popular support, which means he wants to make sure they don't go hungry first and that they don't lack for things like energy and their basics, because it's very important that pops have food and that pops have energy. So when you look at the production level, you can see that food and energy are both at a big negative. Now, even though there's a big stockpile, that's still not a good trend. So based on the AI of the Viceroy, based on his intellect, which is actually pretty low, as you can see, click on here. You can see his intellect is, where is it? It's low here. So he may not make a lot of good decisions. Oops, zoom back in here. So he has chosen to primarily focus on farms and energy, which aren't terrible. Probably not the best choice. Probably should have focused more on admin. But again, that's part of Alliance of the Sacred Sons, is finding the right people you do not directly control. So let's take a look at the production level, and here is the production and employment. Now this shows you the amount of employed pops. Now pops are basically 1 million population that have a specific specialty. You have farmers, miners, administrators, merchants, engineers, teachers essentially, and we call them fluxmen. These create the energy. So as you can see, like for example, we call it academic pops. We only have one academic pop on the planet, one academic pop employed, even though we have 25 on the planet. It's because we only have one college essentially for them to work. So this tells you the amount of staffed and total facilities. You want this to be as close as possible over here. That means that you're efficient. Now over here, we have a ton more farmers than we have farms. And that is another reason that when a Viceroy looks at their build plan, they look at the amount of pops versus the amount of facilities. And so they decide, hey, we need more farms, or else these farmers are going to get pretty upset. Same thing for energy. We have quite a few fluxmen on the planet. We only have 9 facilities, so we probably need to build more facilities. Here, we have actually only a fair amount of unemployed administrators, and we have a few slots here, and that depends on them moving around, and also infrastructure plays a part. So that's pretty much why that Viceroy has made those choices. So let's go ahead and look at trade. You can see it has a level 4 star base. That means it can send up to 4 trade fleets per turn and 142 merchants. And that's really good, because that means that for every 15 merchants, it can support 1 trade fleet. We are receiving already goods from Horlakia. That's in the system. Now, this is an imperial trade hub, which basically means it pulls in everything from the province hub and from the planets in the system. I'll show you that in a little bit when we run the next turn. So suffice to say, we have the infrastructure to receive goods. Total revenue. This tells us a little bit more about how we're getting our 131 billion credits. So Our base GBP, which is gross planetary product, is 330 billion credits. The planetary average development level, which is basically a term saying how developed is the planet? How is it backwater? Is it urban? Is it high tech? And this is determined several ways, but primarily by the types of pops that are on the planet. 16 is pretty high, and that's because we have a lot of administrators who tend to be affluent and want the finer things, and so that is why that has gone up. Now, the Viceroy economic skill is extremely low. This goes from 1 to 200. So we don't know all their skills when I look back on here, but we do know their economic skill, which is a 4. That is terrible. And that is one huge reason why we're struggling, is because we've put a terrible, dumb person in charge of this planet. So that is one thing. We do have a retail sector, but we only have 1% of the goods dedicated to retail. Now, we have a very large population. Merchant efficiency is good. Merchant efficiency is basically how many merchants versus how many people on the planet, and you want that number higher, closer to 100. 0 means you don't have any merchants, so goods can't flow throughout the planet. So think of it as retail, where if you don't have any retail stores, people can't buy things, and there's no Amazon in this world. So we have no imports, we have no exports of yet, and it's costing 363 billion credits to maintain the infrastructure of the planet. This includes both cities and towns, infrastructure for the facilities, as well as things like trade port, your starbase, etc. So that equals 363. We can actually break it out if we go into here and see the planet. I'm sorry, not that one. If we go here, we can see starbase infrastructure is 160 billion credits, trade infrastructure is 10, and then the other infrastructure totals 363 billion credits. So I kind of need to change that. It's a little misleading. This is actually the total infrastructure, but it should actually be the planet infrastructure minus this. So you can kind of see how that breaks down. So one thing that I might look at to kind of jumpstart this planet, the easy thing would be to replace the Viceroy. And I may look at that, but for now, because this is of my own house, I'm going to go ahead and deal with him. So I'm going to go to an assignment action. And there are several things. This changes depending on whether they're a Viceroy, system governor, a province governor, or a house leader. I'm going to go ahead and have them change the retail allocation percentage. As you can tell, it was 1%. I'm going to change that to 20%. Now what this does is this allocates basic materials. Instead of going for trade, instead of going for stockpiles, it allocates them out of that and puts them in the retail channel so that goods can be made from them and essentially more money can be made. But of course, goods that are sent to the retail channel are not available for either trade or stockpiling. So you don't want this to be too high, especially if you have a negative already. So we'll go ahead. We're friends. There should be no reason he wouldn't confirm, and he does. I'm happy to be of service. I will comply. Yes, we can profit to commerce. Yes. So go ahead and close him out. And now, as you can see, now when we reopen it, now we have 20% devoted to retail. So that's going to hopefully increase a little bit once we start going. So we go to the political command mode. We've already talked about the unrest factors a little bit. Ideology is going to be more important as we start building the ideas. The big ones here are worldliness. Now, worldliness is essentially how materialistic are the population in general. So even though there are several cultures and they're made up of different ideas, on average, they're sitting at about an 8 to 10. So that means a retail sector is important to them. And that's why 85% are upset, because there aren't goods to buy. Also, the planet's economy, also important. Authoritarianism is also important. The higher the authoritarianism, the more they want a strong leader in charge. This is what makes them happy. So as you can see, this is not a strong leader. He has a 9 in government skill. This is really a bad Viceroy. We're probably going to need to end up replacing him. So we'll kind of look at what that looks like in a minute, because I think we're going to have to end up doing that. And then tolerance is how tolerant the planet is of other cultures in general. Now this is a blended amount. Each culture has its own tolerance level. You can drill down into the individual cultures to kind of see what, if they would be tolerant more or less of migration. This does factor into migration as well as relocation. And then the rest of expansionism is important when the pops are looking to migrate. A 7 is pretty high. That means they're interested in moving to other planets. So it means if you open a planet, either an outpost or a colony nearby, there's a good chance a lot of the people on this planet will leave, even if they're happy. So we go to the demographic command mode. This shows the total population, the migration. There was no migration last turn. Shows the birth rate and death rate, and then the culture and demographics. So the culture, as you can see, the majority is Neo-American, and then there's kind of a blend, and then there's some other smaller percentages, why it doesn't quite equal 100%. Over here is a demographic overview. Now this shows you the total number of pops for each type of category, their unrest, and their planetary happiness. Unrest is important because obviously it leads to, if it gets too high, it leads to potential rioting, which means they don't work and they lose efficiency. And then happiness, if they're not happy, pops will look to leave. And if their happiness gets below about a 30%, they'll start really considering leaving the planet. So you really want to look and see, especially things like your fluxmen, your merchants, your academics, your mine, the ones that are really important. You don't want them leaving, so you want to kind of keep an eye on this. And this is your people in training. So let's say a farmer can't find anywhere to work. After a time, they're going to, if you're on a planet that has a college or several colleges, then they're going to try to go into training. That means when they come out, they could potentially become a miner, they could potentially become an engineer, or they could potentially become a administrator. And that's kind of a random thing. People don't train to become farmers. Farmers are kind of your base class. But when a new pop is born, they typically come out as a farmer. So you always have a steady supply. We don't really have any issues with happiness here at this time. We do have 9 pops in training, which means we may get some better trained, and that will also increase our ADL level because they will also want the finer things, and we'll increase it that way, which increases our overall income. So that's kind of a base of how that works. We'll go ahead and look at the overview of the planet. So this is a region detail map. As you can see, because it's a Terran planet, there is a wide variety of regions: mountains, jungle, ocean, forest. This just kind of gives you a visual of what to expect. This is actually more important when you're looking at new planets to populate. It'll kind of give you an idea of what the planet looks like. As you can see, we have 30 developable regions out of the 30 on the planet, and each one of these squares is a region. That's the primary biome of that region. We can currently build 361 levels of development. Currently we have 247. So think of it as slots. So when you add all these facilities up, that would equal 247. We have quite a bit of room to grow, but this is why smaller planets can only do so much. Current potential population, we have 586 million people right now. We can support up to 2.5 billion. Of course, that's because we have a nice planet, the bio is high, and we have the infrastructure for it. So we look at the base admin level, 173 out of this planet. We already looked at the development level of 16, the ADL. Type is Terran. The bio of the planet is 80. That affects several things: how nice the planet is, happiness of the pops, how easy it is to grow food, how many people can potentially live there, and certain events. The energy base is 70. The basic base is 88. The heavy base is 60, and the rare base is 40. These are very high numbers. This is essentially the mining base and the ease of getting materials out of a planet with your miners. Military strength is currently 0. The military system is not really in yet. Total revenue is in 216 billion credits. Public order 88. Total population 586 million. So those are your major systems. So when you look at the level. All right, let's go ahead and zoom back out. Now I know we talked earlier about replacing a Viceroy, so I want to take a look at that and what that looks like. This guy is terrible. So we're going to go ahead, and because he is part of our house, you can't really piss off your own house, which is kind of the one nice thing. If he belonged to another house, that would kind of be a big deal. But since he belongs to us, it's not as big a deal. So we're going to go ahead and we'll do a hostile action. We're going to go ahead and remove from... Actually, you know what? No, we're going to do an assignment action. What the difference between a hostile and assignment, this means when you designate for assignment, it means that you promise that you will put them in another position within 6 months. When you fire them, essentially, you're not promising them anything. You're just like, get out. Now, the designate, you have a much higher chance of them leaving peacefully and not being as angry. But if you forget to assign them a new position, with that time, they will get quite upset, as will their house. So, since we're only going 3 turns, it'll be a lot easier. So, we're going to look at a possible replacement. Now, these are obviously people that are willing to work for you. As you can see, Hawken and Waldegrave and Hawken, because they are friendly towards our house. They are more willing to work for us. Now, on the left side, just so you know, this is how they feel about you. And on this one, this is how they feel about this character here. This is their relationship. So, this guy has quite a few lovers. That's probably a bug. I probably need to fix that. So we're going to go ahead and look at admin. We're going to sort them by admin. So we have Gaius Branson. I want someone that has a decent amount of admin. And as you can see, he's got, if you look on the tooltip, he's got a good admin rating, and he's also got a better economic rating. You can't really see some of the others because I only have a medium intel level, but he probably looks like someone that I can work with. Also, he is someone that I am friends with, so that will make it easier too. So I'm going to go ahead and replace him with him. We're going to go ahead and confirm it. I'm happy to be of service. I will comply. I will leave with honor. Well, good for you. All right, so now he's now a courtier. Go ahead and get out of that. And now we have our new Viceroy. Now, look what happened to our revenue. It skyrocketed, 927 billion credits. Look what happened. Look at our retail sector. Now we have 20%. Now we have a Viceroy economic skill way higher. Our total product has skyrocketed. And now look, you know, we're super happy. We're allies. He's happy. People love him. He's got 53% popular support. So that was a really good play. That was kind of an easy thing to do. Sometimes you don't have that many. Sometimes you have a lot of houses that hate you, and you don't have a big pool to select from. And of course, sometimes the Viceroy doesn't go willingly, especially if it's not from another planet, and then you have to find other means. So, all right. So we've done some things so far. The next thing I like to do is look at my primes. So I have a domestic prime. The ones that are important right now are the financial prime. We've kind of already talked about them. The other primes don't yet really have an effect, but they are up here. As we start installing the different systems, they will have more of an effect. All right. So I've got right now, what's interesting is I don't have a province hub in this province. Neosiris is a civilization hub, but there's no province hub tying this together. So what I probably want to do is build a province hub. So I'm going to look at, the only candidate I have is, oh, you know what? They do have a province trade hub. Oh, I bet that's okay, that's a bug. So they do have a province trade hub, but it's not being shown because it's being overridden by the trade hub, the civilization hub, which doesn't show. So I need to fix that. So there is a province trade hub here. You just can't see it. But let's just say, just for the sake of it, that we wanted to move the trade hub or build a trade hub. Now this planet, Jutherbog, has no trade hub. They are actually owned by House Milok. I'm trying to build a better relationship with them because I decide I need miners, because as you can see, my materials are not very, very high. So I'm going to need more materials shortly. And I can do that in several ways. I can build outposts, I can colonize, I can get them from other planets. There's several different ways to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and close these down, by the way. All right, so we're going to create a project. We're going to go ahead and start building this up. We're going to go ahead. Now, we don't have a starbase. If you look at the trade, you can see there's no starbase. So I can't have a trade port until I have a starbase. A starbase is the absolute base level of thing you need to have any kind of trade hub, any kind of trade port. It's the very first thing you need. So we're going to go ahead and build a starbase. All right, so now this is the project screen. What this screen allows us to do is build projects. Now, projects are very, very important in Alliance of the Sacred Sun. This is how you do things. There's anything from colonization to moving fleets to building things. Everything is done through a project. So the first thing that I like to do is I like to sort by administrative effect and look at which houses I would like to have kind of gain. So Hawken and Horlock are already my friends. I'm trying to actually get Milok in my good graces. So when you give them projects and give their characters projects, they like you better. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. So I've got Milok, the house leader. He's actually got a decent skill of 4. That means he would open up 4 slots, and I could add up to 4 characters on the project. But his efficiency is only 76%, and that's not great. You want someone with at least 100%. That affects the amount of time it takes and the efficiency of the admin or the ADM that you put in the project. So even though he kind of stinks, see if I go put a few more in there, you see how now I've got some green, but they're part of Hawken, and I don't really need them to be that happy with me, so I'm going to go ahead and take them out. I guess I'll go ahead and use the house leader, why not? So we're going to drag and drop. So as you can see, now 4 slots have opened up, and there's the administrator effect. So now we need to add 2 things, ADM and money. So this particular project costs 30 billion credits, and that has to come from your characters, which is why it's important to put them in roles where they earn money. If they don't have money, they can't be part of projects, which means they can't gain power easily, which makes them upset. So when I look in the Empire, Milok, the only people I have ADM are Planetary Viceroy of New Series and the System Governor of Abzu, because again, I only have one system. So we're going to have to kind of expand this out a little bit. Okay, so now we have Provincial Governor has a tremendous amount of ADM because they have a high skill. And then, of course, the System Governor of Neo-Cyrus has a tremendous amount of ADM because now because we put a new Viceroy in. So remember, we put a new person in. His ADM is only 43 because he's not part of this project. Planets can only put their projects in their own planets. In other words, if I built a starbase on New Terra, he would have full ADM because it's out of his chain of command. There's an inefficiency, and so he can only provide 43. Even though if you look at him, his ADM would be 432 if he would actually be able to contribute his full amount. So we're going to go ahead and use the System Governor. This is Horlock. I guess I'd really prefer to use someone else from another house, but I need someone to pay for it, and it doesn't look like Milok has a lot of people worth having. So I'm going to go ahead and drag her in. It's going to take 1 turn because she has a tremendous amount, plus even with the administrator effect, there's still a ton of ADM. And of course, she has way more than 30 billion. This shows the percentage of funds that they will actually apply towards the project. If they don't have any money or if they don't believe in the project, they won't fund anything. This also has a lot to do with their relationship towards the administrator. So if we look at Hawkstorm and Milok, if we looked at their relationship, if it was neutral or worse, then they probably don't have a very good relationship. So we'll go ahead and execute. As you can see, it will take 1 turn. So now you can see build, expand 1 turn. So we'll go ahead and get out of that. All right. So I've got 1 AP. So I'm going to spend that on improving my relationship with Milok, which is one of my goals. So I'm back here. Now one thing, this is a new screen. This shows the relationships that this character has with all the other characters in the civilization. And these are the different filters that you can turn off. So this is just with the Viceroys. This shows their relationship with these individual Viceroys. And you can see, so the new person that I put in charge of New Terra, they're not really happy. They consider them prey. So that is something to look at. So I did something nice for him. That's going to hurt my relationship with this guy and vice versa. So every nice thing that I do for Gaius Branson, because they're enemies, he is going to take it poorly. And he's going to lose what we call trust. That's a kind of a value you don't see. It's kind of behind the scenes. But eventually, if I continue to lose trust, then I could go down a relationship level. So right now, we're neutral. So that's just kind of something to think in mind when you're going to do something nice for somebody. And it works in reverse. If they're enemies, then something I do nice for him is going to kind of piss him off. It could potentially piss him off a little bit. So something I just have to keep in mind. So I'm going to do something friendly. It's not a big deal. I'm going to express support. This is basically me giving a little speech and saying, yes, I support the House leader. They're doing great things. Yay. A lot of the effectiveness of this has to do with my love and fear, which is, okay, it's 50. So I'll go ahead and do that. Confirm the action. He is okay with that. I'd be delighted to have your support. All right, so as you can see, his power went up a little bit. Now this shows his base power, 146, and this is his current power, which is 153. It went up a little bit. By the way, this is administrator skill. He's a very good administrator. We've already seen that. This is pressure. I can put well, a house leader really can't have pressure put on them, but they can put pressure on any other character that's below them, and that's actually under an assignment action. Well, I can't do it because I'm out of AP, but I can show you next turn. Intel level shows the amount of intel that I know about this character. It goes from none to max. None, low, medium, high, and max. So I don't really know a lot. That's why I have a lot of question marks here with their skills. That's why I have either high or low when it comes to their motives and talents. As I get more intel, I'll have a better idea of just how good they are in certain things. This is their culture. Religion's not in yet, but that's kind of a placeholder. They have $70 billion in their personal treasury. They don't have any ADM because they don't run a house. I mean, they don't run a they don't have a planet or a system. He's a house leader. His health, he's okay. He's functional, and he's actually a hybrid. And this gives some bonuses to things like lifespan and intelligence. So, and then this is incoming message, just talking a little bit about him talking to you, saying what's up. This is their fear and love within their current assignment. Since again, they don't have a planet or a system or a province, there's nothing there. And this shows their character traits. In this case, he's a fast learner and avaricious. So as a house leader, he's much more likely to use wealth as a ultimate goal. All right, and this shows where he's at currently. He's on Jutherbog, which is their throne world. All right, so hopefully that gives you an idea. Now let's look. So right now we have a 10 reputation because we, a couple of reasons. We praised their house leader, and then we also cut them in on a project. Kierley Finn is a little unhappy with us because they weren't part of that. Horlock is happy because they got to, remember I had to use the province governor. Hawken is not happy, a little bit happy, because also everything you do has knock-on effects. So if their house leader is friends with someone that you do something nice for, it improves your reputation with them. And of course Waldegrave is similar. So you look at this as the overall number. You don't want this to go below -500. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and, as you can see, I've improved relations with quite a few people. These are generally people that were already friends with the house leader. So one thing that's changed, if you do a action with, say, a courtier, they don't really have any function within the empire. Not a lot of people are really going to care. Maybe just their friends. But if you give an action to a house leader or a province governor or someone that has a great deal of power, then that is going to have a very large effect on what you do. All right, so we're going to go ahead and, okay, I don't know the budget's due. I already put it in. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and process, and we're going to kind of see what happens. Now, the good news is I've been working on turn generation time, and it's actually gotten quite a bit quicker. So this turn should actually be generated here in about 15 seconds, which is nice. So once it wraps up, I'll be able to show you some things that have happened. Okay, so we've got a couple things that have happened. My love went up a hair, 0.5%. We have made several people happy. We already saw that last turn. So remember, we put some money into Intel. Good news, we have found additional information on Questor. So who is that? Oh, the house leader of Hawken. Sweet. So now we have a moderate intel level, which means we're going to find out more about their emotions, and also there's a chance to unlock additional character skills. So that's kind of nice. And again, that can happen every turn. And then we have 11 million people on the planet Copernica. So we had 11 million people gains, which means we probably had some movement. So let's take a look and see what happens. So we have migration. We had 7 million people come from Jutherbog. We had some engineers leave, probably because there weren't jobs. So let's take a look. We go to production level. We look and see, and sure enough, we have 19 out of 20 have now been filled. Before we didn't have that many. So we still have quite a few that have come that don't have jobs. They may end up going somewhere else. Essentially, this is a part of the program that I want to kind of rewrite a little bit. There's kind of a land rush when there's jobs, and the people that get there first get the jobs, and so it often leaves other people without job, which I guess is kind of how it is in the real world. But I may rewrite that just to kind of make it a little easier to follow. So, all right, now you see how if we go to our economic screen, so you see how now our GDP now, because it jumped so high, we now have an empire share of 684, which means now our gross economic product is higher. So now we're okay. So now or at least relatively okay. So now the chance of economic collapse has dropped, and now my issue has dropped because it's not critical. So that's one thing that we fixed. So remember, we went to Neosiris. We went ahead and we built now we have a star base. You see this shows up here now. So now, if we decide what project, now we can build a trade port, and we can actually have this as a trade port, which is not a bad thing, because we look at it, this is a pretty good planet for heavy materials. And one thing that we don't have a lot of is heavy materials. We really don't have a lot of basic materials. It's probably something we need to look at. So let's actually go here and let's look at which planets have actually we don't have any that are generating a surplus of basics, which means we probably need to build an outpost. So that's what we're going to do. In the meantime, we look over here, we see that Warlock is colonizing a planet. In one turn, they're going to colonize Pinnacle 4, which is this one right here. It's a pretty nice planet. I mean, it's ice. It's not great, but I guess they feel like it's I mean, there's not a lot out here. It's barren. So one thing about the way the game is now, they can only colonize planets that you explore. Houses don't really have their own exploration fleets. So one of the mechanics of the game is how willing you are to keep your houses in check. If you explore everywhere and the more stars that you unlock, essentially, and logistical stations that you build. By the way, we didn't look at the logistics, but you can see that it covers the entire area, and we don't have any other provinces, so we don't really need to build any for now. Then they will expand there too. So let's take a look and see if there's anywhere we can go. We can see if we can build an outpost. Well, here's Bilebog. Here's desert. 16 billion credits to build an outpost. Infrastructure cost. That wouldn't be too bad. Now, the first thing we have to do, though, on a planet, we have to attach it to a province. The thing about outposts, they have to be attached to a province. That means you can't just build outposts that are cheap, just out wherever, and they create their own infrastructure. They do not. They have to be tied into an outpost. So what we're going to want to do, we know we're going to want to plan ahead, and we're going to make this an outpost because we want these materials. But the first thing we're going to have to do is assign the system to the province. So we go to Empire because it's not attached to any of these here, and we kind of do the same thing that we did earlier. Now, again, I'm trying to wine and dine Milok, so I'm going to take these out, and I'm going to see if there's any. Actually, I'm just going to take myself out. All right, and see if anyone has. Okay, well, yeah, they don't really have a lot of good admin. That's really not their thing, though. That's not what they're known for. So I guess I'm going to continue to butter up him. So we'll give him more power. This, by the way, this plus 13 means that's the amount of power that he will gain from this project. And this is from here, that's half of the project power. And then the remainder is allocated based on the amount of money that they fund. So now let's look at the admin. Yeah, nobody's got any admin. So that's not already being used. So we're going to have to just suck it up and get some other people involved. All right, so now you see how everything's in red. That means because it's a planet out in the middle of nowhere, so none of these are attached. So we're going to go ahead and use, I guess, Volupsa of Hawken. That won't hurt anything. Now she's a provincial governor. You notice how everything went away. So she took basically all the ADM from her systems that were under her, and the systems took the ADM that the planets are under. So if you have an inefficient governor, which they have a 3 admin, which is not bad, but that's something else you may look at when you're talking about efficiency. You may want to but then you have to fire someone from Hawken who's your ally, and they get pissed. So that's kind of things you have to take into account too. So let's right click. Let's see if we can't get someone else. Well, we really don't have anyone else, so we'll just go ahead and put her in. And now we need to look at people that can fund. So I put wealth at 0. And we want to find people who can fund the project. So we've got 67% of it funded. It's not very expensive to add a system. It's basically administrative. So here's somewhere we can hopefully get. Let's see if we can get Milok on here. See anybody with any money? Okay, good. So we've got. Oops. Yeah. No. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll have here's some courtiers, financial prime. Let's get our financial prime. Oh, but they're willing to fund 1%. Let's go ahead and get this person here. So now we can execute. We have the funding, the amount that they've contributed. She gets 10 power. She gets 15. So we'll go ahead and execute. So now the system has been assigned to province, and we now have 3 AP. Each project costs 2 AP. So now I can do one of several things when I go back to my Grand Vizier. So I'm working on the holding problem, gross empire product. I'm working on probably need to install some better people. Let's take a look at my other new series. Let's see who is in there. Actually, that should. All right, let's take a look at who I have in here. So he has a phenomenal administration score, so he's getting a ton of admin out for a system capital that's not very big. By the way, I'm curious to see what he is working on. He's working on admin as well, and he's really plugging it in. You can see he's at 53%. So they have plenty of food, as you can see, plenty of food. They have a surplus of energy, so he's like, yep, putting it all into admin. So that's good. So I probably don't want to replace him. So what I probably want to do is look at the revenue. Now you can see we only have 10% devoted to revenue. We've got a lot of merchants. So when you look at improving your retail sector, you can do it a couple of ways. You can add more merchants, or you can just collect more money to retail. The problem with the retail is we already have a pretty significant loss of resources. We're going to run dry here in about, I don't know, 2 years, give or take, 2.5 years. So that may not be the best way to go. So let's do this. Let's see if we can attract some merchants. So we go to assignment actions. Let's go to initiate specific pops. Let's see if we can bring some merchants to new series. Yes, he agrees. Of course he will. He's on my team. These are pretty easy. I've been talking mainly to people that are in my house. If I ask this of other people in other houses, it might be more difficult. So now what happens is when I go to the demographic mode, you can now see where is it? These numbers here show the relative value of a planet to a pop. So the higher the value, the number, the more desirable that planet is. So that will increase the desirability, and hopefully next turn we'll see some merchants come in. So I have 2 APs left. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of let it go for the time being. I don't have anything just super pressing to do, so I'll go ahead and process. Oh, one thing I forgot to do is show the house AI what they are doing. We'll do that next turn. So we should have a new turn here in just a little bit. Looks like Biolog will be set up soon. Okay, so here we go. All right, so we've got Pinnacle. They have taken over. Remember I said that they were building an output. See, here's Barguest. 34 million people moved there. So they really took a lot out of it. Let's see where they came from. New Terra, Jyotirbog, New Ceres, Copernica, and they're really looking to get some miners here. So let me show you kind of what the houses. Okay, so we look at Waldegrave. They're looking to accumulate resources. Hawken is trying to scout systems because they need to find some territory. Kierley Finn is also scouting systems. Horlock is accumulating resources, and Milok is scouting systems. So basically, when there are no really good planets to nearby, they're going to start looking at systems. And so what they're doing is they're scouting out, they're sending out probes, and that's when they're building their resources to do that. So they're trying to basically find more better planets. All right, so here's our new, they have 29 farmers, 2 miners, and 3 engineers, which is interesting. So when you look at the demographics, that actually makes sense because it's an ice world, and so you're going to need a lot of farmers to make any kind of farming. So that's why it starts with 15 farms. No energy facilities, they'll need to build some. And this Viceroy is focusing on mines because, as you can see, everything is already at a negative. But when you look at the numbers, you got pretty good basic materials here. So that house has decided to make this claim the system, build a colony, and put in someone that can build more mines. So this is an example of kind of the longer term strategies of houses. Now, my popular support dropped quite a bit. So remember, it was 50.3. So let's take a look. So we're going to go into demographic command mode, and we're going to see kind of what happened. So I'm at 48% popular support in my home planet, which makes sense. I'm only at 40% with Hawken, which is interesting, or Horlock, which is kind of interesting because we're allies. But they're a traditionalist culture, which is a different culture, and sometimes you have culture clash. Marinetti, 37%. Kierley Finn, they're a Cold War with me, so their people are not going to like me in general. So as they grow, that could be more of a problem. And then Abzu, 48%, and they lost a lot of people. So the big migration, that didn't really help things. So let's see, I got an increase on Uzina Seltradat, that's a courtier. I remember her from earlier. She's one of the people that helped one of our projects. So now she's at a high intel level, and as you can see now we have 4. By the way, this is military skill. This is not in the game yet, so if you're wondering. So of course we lost 22 million on Ceres, 34 million on Bargast, and then we built a new mine on Jutherberg. Remember, they were looking to build mines, so when we click on it, we can see that they are continuing to focus on mines. So yeah, so over here, okay, so they have built a mine, and they're at 56% towards the next one because they're putting like a huge amount of time into 56% of their points. Now you can also see they've cranked up their build points. They're up to 80 build points, and they're at 63%, which if you look here, here you see I'm being worked to the bone. This is dropping their public order slightly. So you see how everything's kind of interrelated. Now this is not my planet. It's a holding by Milok, so I only have a limited amount of things that I can do with this planet. But if I wanted to, I could recommend that they, if I was, going on. Now you can see this person won't serve. She's not very happy with me. She's prey. So let's try to get her, just to kind of get an idea, let's try to get her to change the manufacturing overdrive. Let's get her to drop it to 30%. Or, well, yeah, 30%. That's fine. Okay, well, I agree that our factories must be run at a different tempo. Which that's not a major thing to change. That actually probably should be a little bit harder for her to do. But the fact that she's prey, that actually she doesn't like me, but she's afraid of me. See, her power is only 61, but mine's 250. So I have 4 times the amount of power she does. And plus our houses are not at war, and we're actually kind of friendly right now, and we're building towards being more friendly. So she actually is more likely to help me. So since I'm on a roll, I'm going to ask her if she can reconsider not wanting to work for me, which is this will not serve. So if I go to assignment actions, I'm sorry, if I go to, where is it? Well, I can force service to Empire. I can make her work for me, but I really don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get to know her. Let's see if we can get a little bit better relationship. Okay. So it's green. It means she's positive. She accepted it. Now our relationship didn't improve, but I got more intel on her. Let's see if I can give her. Let's see if I can express support. No, let's give her a speech. Let's see if she'll let me do a speech. Okay, good. So she will let me do a speech. So that improves. Now, as you can see, her power went up a little bit. It also improves her popular support because my popular support is relatively high. So eventually, if I work on her enough, hopefully I can get her to serve in a peaceful manner because she is pretty strong. I mean, she's got a 3 administrator skill. She's average intelligence. I mean, there's not anything she's really bad at. So since I'm trying to make Milok more of an ally, I kind of want to set the foundation early on to have their characters also like me so that when we do become allies, they're more likely to do what I need them to do with their planet. So, all right, so we're out of XP or AP. So those are really the first 3 turns. You can kind of get an idea of what we're doing. And you can see when I improve relations. Now you now see here, not everybody was happy when I gave a speech, worsened relations with Courier Cy Vanek. So when we look and see, let's see what their relations are. Oh, yeah, they don't like each other. They're they have a vendetta with each other. So yeah, she would be pretty upset about that. So what happens then is, see, when we look at Kierley Finn, that's yet another thing that they see, and they're you know, it affects my reputation, because now after a couple of turns you can kind of start to see I've concentrated a lot on Melok, my reputation's improving. Horlock, Kierley Finn I've kind of left out of things, and Hawken and Waldegrave I haven't done anything with, mainly Hawken and Melok. So over time you want to manage these reputations, because if you want a better relationship, you need the higher this bar is, the more chance that you can ask for a higher relationship. So let's say I get up to about 300, I could ask him for a house action, which to improve relationship, but I can't because I'm out of AP. So hopefully that gives you an idea of some of the things you can do. We didn't even really talk about scouting systems. We really didn't get much into the trade system. Really not a lot going on with trade, because it's such a small, and there's no other provinces, but that is also an important part of the game. There's just not a lot of trade right now, because there's just not a lot of infrastructure. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I will look forward to putting out a few more tutorials in the future, and enjoy the game.